The next thing we have to do when it comes to setting up our universal connectivity is we need to come over here to logical switches. And as you can see, I have a couple here in the secondary. I have a couple here in the several in the primary, but I don't have any that are associated to the universal transport zone. So I'm going to create a couple. I'm going to go ahead and create one that's going to be, I'm going to call this universal out of the gate, just so that it's very, very easy to identify. And I'm just going to call a logical switch 1. And the transport zone, guess what? I have, notice the globe here on this one, but not the other two. I'm going to associate to the universal transport zone. It's going to use unicast communication. I'm going to click on add. And that's been added. I'm going to go ahead and add another one. And this is going to be universal logical switch. And I'm going to go ahead and make that 2. And the transport zone is going to be universal transport zone. So I've created 2 of them just to have something to play with as we're going along. All right, now if I come over here to, I've created them on the primary, but if I go to the secondary, guess what? My universal logical switch from the other side came through. So I have universal logical switch 1 and universal logical switch 2. Because of the fact that I'm doing universal replication, I'm going to go ahead and it's going to propagate down to my secondary manager as well. The next thing for me to go do, and this is where it gets a little interesting, is we actually have to associate VMs to these logical switches. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to come back over here, and on this guy here, universal wire 1, I get to go and add VM. So if we look at this, we have a bunch of VMs that we can associate. I'm actually going to cancel out on this. I'm going to come up to the layer 2 VPN. I'm going to go ahead and remove VM. I'm going to go ahead and remove this guy because I don't need him associated there. That's something I did not do ahead of time. And then on this guy right here, for the DC1, DLR1 connection, I'm going to remove these VMs. Some of them are turned on, some of them are not. I'm going to bump these guys all to here and remove, because I'm going to associate them all to the universal logical switch. So I'm going to come over here, remove VM, and take these guys and bump them all to the right to remove them as well. Alright, so everything has been removed. If I go ahead and refresh this, we can see some of these guys are not getting removed for whatever reason. If I was to come over here to hosting clusters, okay, now it's updating. Hosting clusters, you're going to see that I have a number of VMs powered on, and everything's looking pretty good. So my goal here is I am going to connect LVM1 and LVM3 to and LVM DC2 LVM1 together on the same subnet, and I'll do I'll go ahead and I'm going to create another VM here so we can have cross vCenter communication, but they have to be in the same subnet. That's the whole thing. Because what you're doing, and you might think, well, wait a minute, you're in 2 different data centers, you'd want to have different IP ranges, right? Well, that's the beauty of this solution. You don't have to have different subnets. You can have them all in the same subnet, and the cross connectivity is in play. So if I was to take this guy right here and right click, power him off, give that a second for him to go to power off, yes, and then right click, and I'm going to clone, and template. I'm going to convert to template. That's going to come over here. It's going to take a couple seconds for that to work. Go expand this guy here, DC2, and now I've got this guy. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say new VM from this template. This guy right here will be DC2-LVM1. Next. Oh, I have to. Well, that's because I need to actually, pardon, 1 second. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to go to rename, and I'm going to call this the DC, we'll call this the Linux template. Click OK. Right click here. We're going to new VM from this template, and we're going to call this DC2-LVM1. Click next. We're going to put this in the DC2 we need to go ahead and select a host. We're going to choose the original deployment method. Next. I'm going to power on the virtual machine after creation. Next. And then finish. This is going to take some time to do this, obviously, because now we're going to be creating a virtual machine. This won't take a ton of time for it to work, but then again, it's going to be a few minutes before that's good to go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let that guy sit for a few. What I'm going to do is, I can see LVM1 and LVM3. I'm going to put LVM1 on this guy. I'm going to put him on the first logical switch, and then DC to LVM2 will be on the second one. So I'm going to go back over here to networking and security, and on my logical switches, I'm going to choose this guy right here, first universal wire. I'm going to say add VM, and guess what? All of my connectivity is looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and add LVM1 and LVM3, bump them to the right, click on next. I'm going to choose the NICs that need to get mapped, click next, and then finish. Now, I'm going to go to the secondary. So I'm going to let that finish up, because right now the virtual machines are getting reconfigured as we speak. That'll take a couple seconds. It's going to go a little bit slow because I'm creating a new VM. I'm going to click on the primary. I'm going to go to secondary. And on this guy here, I'm going to go ahead and add VM. And right now, the other VM hasn't been created. So what I'm going to do is, while this is happening, I'm going to pause until this VM is done being created. This shouldn't take too long at all. I'm going to pause, and then we'll go ahead and get that guy connected and configured. And then I'm going to deploy a second Linux VM so that we can have that squared away and go from there. Alright, after about 10 minutes or so, I have two new, like literally 10 minutes. Well, maybe 11. Anyway, I have two new VMs deployed and ready to go. And they're lightweight. That's why they were able to be done. Windows VMs are obviously much more involved because they're a much larger operating system. So I'm going to go back over here to my networking and security, and I'm going to logical switches. And we'll click on this guy right here. Let me go to connected VMs. Let's go to remove VMs, and we're going to go ahead and pull these guys off. Remove. Give that a second to update. Why is that not? Oh, the template. Okay, no big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and universal wire 1. I'm going to go to add VMs, and I will add the first one. I'll add LVM1, bump that to the right, next. Associate that NIC, next, and then finish. And then on universal wire 2, I'll go ahead and, I'll add the VM, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to do LVM2, bump that to the right, next, associate the NIC, next, and then finish. Now I'm going to go back over here to my primary, click on primary, and if I look at this guy, I've got two VMs. If I click on it, it'll tell me which VMs are there. I have LVM1 and LVM3. Excellent. I come over here, I'm going to go add VM, and I'll go ahead and add WinVM1 and WinVM2, bump them to the right, next, associate their NICs, next, and then finish. So that'll get those added. Alright, now that I have all of that said and done, I'm going to go back over here to hosting clusters, and as you can see, like now I have my universal logical switch. Everybody's happy. So I have to do a little bit of additional work here. So we know that based off the config, we're going to be dealing with this guy. I'm going to go ahead and look at him, and I don't have him currently opened. I'm going to go and launch remote console, and I'm just going to give this guy I'm going to connect anyway. I'm going to give them the 172.29, and I'm going to give it the 200 and 201. Or I should say 100 and 101 for the different segment IDs that I'm working with. But that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and set the password, get that guy configured, and we're going to go ahead and get them IP addressed. So I'm going to click up here, and I don't have anything configured for DHCP yet. I haven't talked about any of that stuff yet. I'm going to go ahead and wired connection to edit. IPv4 settings, we're going to go ahead and set this to manual. We're going to add, and this guy here will be 172.29.100. And we'll say 11. So actually I'll make this 21 because we're in DC2. Net mask is 24, and then 172.29.100.1. And then I'm going to go ahead and set my DNS server to be quad 8. Click on save, and then close. And so hopefully I'll connect, assuming that I've done everything correctly. Might take it a couple seconds for it to trigger. So while I'm waiting for that to happen, I'm going to come over here to LBM1. Do I have LBM1 pulled up? I do not. So let me go ahead and launch remote console. We'll put him in the same subnet, but this will be 11. 172.29.100.11. While that's happening, I'm going to go to here. Okay, there it goes. It's finally connected. It took a little longer than I would have liked, but that's okay. So over here, I'm going to do a if config, and we know that we are going to be, we're not currently configured. So I'm going to come up here. I come over here and do an if config. I am 172.29.100.21. I'm going to edit connections. Let me go ahead and minimize this real quick. Edit connections. We're going to go ahead and edit this guy. And as you can see, things are running a little bit slow. Hopefully it'll speed up here. So I'm going to bring this guy over here. IPv4 settings. DHCP will be set to manual, and then I'm going to go ahead and say add. This guy here will be 172.29.100.11. Oops. 172.29.100.11 /24 to 172.29.100.1. Quad 8 is my DNS server. Go ahead and save that, and then we'll close it out. Go ahead and open up the terminal, and there we go. So we're going to hit the if config, and we can see that our IP addresses are in the same subnet. So the idea would be to ping 172.29.100.21, and we can ping it. That's a huge thing. And we're pinging cross vCenter. So I'm LVM1 here, and over here I've got DC2 LVM1, and we're cross vCenter. So the communication is working. Let me go ahead and click on LVM3 and do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and set remote console. And this is why I like this capability. I think it's actually pretty sweet that you can do stuff like this. Go ahead and log into this guy real quick and get him configured appropriately. Bring this down a little bit. And then we're going to come in here and edit the connection. This one here will be 172.29.100.13. Edit. And get this guy squared away. IPv4 settings. We're going to set this to manual. Add 172.29.100.13 /24 172.29.100.1, and then Google as DNS, save, and then close. Connection is established. if config, ping 172.29.100.11. That's working. And then 21. That's working. Awesome. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for WinVM1. Go ahead and we have this. These two should be already launched. which they are WinVM1. I'm going to go ahead and close this guy out, and I'm going to click up here. Let me close this out real quick. I don't need the firewall still open. Right click here, open networking and sharing, edit this. And this guy currently is connected to 10,001. So properties here. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to set this guy to be 172.29.101. And this guy here is going to be, we'll say 11/24 to 172.29.101.1. DNS server will be quad 8. Click on OK. Close. Close. There's that. Let me go grab VM2, which is right here. Same thing. Let me go ahead and properties. And then we're going to set this guy to be 101. And this guy here will be 12. We'll make this 101. And then click on OK. Close. Close. And then these two are going to, I'll do a quick test ping here. I'll do a ping to 172.29.101.11. I know I'm going to be able to ping that. Now if I come down here to DC2 LVM2 and then open the remote console, connect anyway. This one here will be 172.29.101.22. Go ahead and do my configuration here. We will go ahead and edit connections. We're going to go and wired connection 2, we'll edit this guy. And this will be the last thing that we have to touch. Next thing we'll take a look at in the next video will be logical routers. Add here, this will be 172.29.101.22/24, 172.29.101.1, and then quad 8. Save and close. And we should get a connection here momentarily. I'm going to go ahead and right click, open terminal. Hopefully ifconfig. We're kind of dead in the water until that triggers. It might take it a couple seconds for it to come across. But let's see here. I don't know why it's... Oh, there it goes. It just took some time. So we'll run that command again, 172.29.101.22. We're going to go ahead and ping 172.29.101.11. And that's working. And 12. Excellent. So I have two logical switches, two universal logical switches that are both spanning the data center, and I have connectivity to both. So all of my communication back and forth between the two different data centers is working. We're going to go ahead and take a look at DLRs in the next video and do the inter VNI routing through that. And then we'll take a look at how you can connect it to the Edge Services Gateway and do all that good stuff that goes along with it. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch all of you in the next video.